Welcome to the Heroes of Reality podcast, a podcast about the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
Hey there, young adventurers. Dylan here. And on today's podcast, I interview Jason Ray. He is the head of Vive Studios, and he helps with developers getting up and running in the world of virtual reality. I met him years ago over at CES when I pitched him on one of my VR games that was more of a prototype, kind of a road rash VR experience. We connected, and he's been a big support to me and all of the developers in the world of virtual reality. He helps you get up and started. He helps you with pitfalls, sometimes helps you with financing tools, and he just really is passionate about the space and overall a great guy. We talk about his journey from the world of game development and being a producer over there to get into the world of virtual reality for HTC. Talks about his magic moment, his mind-blowing VR experience that got him chills and got him to jump in headfirst into the virtual reality space. And then we talked about what are some of the pitfalls that you face as being a virtual reality developer up and coming, how to get started, and where to find people online if you're trying to form alliances. And it was a great conversation. It was awesome to catch up with an old friend. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to present my friend, Jason Ray. Hey, Jason, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Dylan. Great to see you, man.
Of course, brother. Of course. Always a pleasure, brother. Always a pleasure.
It's
been a little while since we've seen each other.
It's true. I think, the current state of things has us all kind of hiding under rocks somewhere, but believe me, busier than ever, more meetings than I've ever had in my life, and keep them busy.
Yeah, brother. It's crazy how we connected before in the world of virtual reality at CES like a long time ago, but it's weird. Before then, it was kind of virtual reality was more of a like a vitamin, kind of a nice to have, and then with COVID, it went into like a pain pill where it's like, oh my God, I need this, and this has to be a thing, which is crazy.
Yeah, we're keeping in touch with each other. My team, we actually meet in virtual reality 3 days a week, and collaborate and conduct business in virtual reality. We actually like it better than Zoom calls. It's we do feel the presence, and we still enjoy the idea of being in the same room together.
That's cool. Do you do like whiteboarding sessions in there and things like that, or?
Yeah, pretty much anything there's not a lot of limitations in terms of what we can do in virtual reality. In fact, it's usually the other way around.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask what systems do you use for that? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, not to sound like an ad, but HTC produced something called Vive Sync, available free download. It's simple team collaboration application that allows up to 30 people and a suite of tools, which I think are really ideal for like making presentations and so forth. And it just gives us enough that we can bring in 3D models. We can write with a pen, and there's a number of other things available to us that allow us to conduct meetings in virtual reality, usually project related. We got a browser, we've got the ability, we can bring in documents. Everything is huge. It's up on a big screen. It's just, and then we can high five and shake hands and do silly stuff too, because it's full body avatars. So, it's virtual reality, man. I mean, it's cool. We're in the room, we're doing our work.
That's incredible. Yeah, and part of things, especially being in the VR space, it's like with anything else. It's good to eat your own dog food. It's good to actually have the thing that you have. Years ago, I don't know if you noticed, I used to own a gourmet food truck before I got into the world of virtual reality. And right when I started it, like day one when I launched with my partner, he turned to me out of nowhere. I was like, "I'm a vegan now," and I was like, "You just opened a burger food truck with me, and you're a vegan?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Okay." It's like, there we go. This is where we're at. So,
Expand the menu,
yeah,
um,
we definitely did.
we find, I'm a virtual reality guy, and we do talk about things like, hey, what can the world be better by uh, making something virtual? And Zoom calls can be a lot better, right? But the idea was, exactly, you got to eat your own dog food to prove it, and we built a tool and we started using it as a team, And and there's so many applications in virtual reality, which is a whole other discussion, is about what a lonely place it can be by yourself. Um, but with other people, it's absolutely fantastic. And even with just rudimentary avatars and basic environments, we're able to meet and feel like this is cool. And it was just more jovial. And um, as a tool for our team, it helped us beat COVID a little bit and some of the things that was keeping us from being able to be a little bit more productive.
Mm.
But other teams caught whiff of what we had done and started sharing the tool. And then HTC comes back and says, guys, this is great. Let's do something with this, take it to the next level. And that, so this is sort of how a lot of the projects start in virtual reality at HTC. It's you solve a problem and you build your proof of concept to do that, and in the end you realize that it works and you just keep going and pushing. And we think virtual collaboration and meetings are a definite step up from what was there before people had headsets. You asked about what we were using, and
Mm.
when you're meeting with people, you have to be a little bit agnostic in terms of what you allow. So for us, that was one of the things we said right away, is this has to be able to support all headsets, and this has to be able to support people who don't have a headset. So we built a PC viewer component that puts you in the room just on a 2D screen, and also that same item exists for an Android operating system, so you can join by Android phone or tablet. But I mean, yeah. So we, of course, we're inviting non-VR into this, but funny, one of the things we had to do was find a way to make the non-VR people feel a bit more on par with those who are actually sitting there doing full body tracking and in a virtual meeting room, and so try to give them features and give them presence, so they're not just a fly on the wall.
Man, that nailed it. I mean, and that's also one of the reasons why I think that 360 VR, came out, and it came out to solve an issue. But then a lot of people got into the world of 360 virtual reality. But then you compare that to, say, multi-user VR, and it's no comparison, because it's like the difference that I call it between the difference for being a ghost and being a god. And literally,
That's pretty
literally,
good.
I mean, really, in that whole area, you are 360 VR. You just look around, you're like, okay, you can't look, you can't touch, you can't interact, and very much the same thing with a PC or a mobile phone. Is like you can't do that. It's like you literally are eyes and ears, and that's all you've got, right? Versus in VR, you can make butterflies appear, and you can do this, and you can all those different things, and that's why it's just it was an easy way for people in the video business to get into VR and to say, I do VR, but it wasn't the most impactful. And for me, one of the things that I've always focused on, and I think you're there with it, is that the magic moments for me have always been the greatest impact is multi-user VR, having people in that shared space collaborating, and then just adding tools or widgets or whatever things might be to enhance that experience that we couldn't do that in real life. You couldn't grow 10 times the size or shrink someone down or any of those other all those other magic moments. So I love the fact that you guys are in that space, but you also do need to address the fact that not everyone's got a headset, and people have to come in, and in having someone in there and be present is better than not being present at all. Not be like a VR snob and be like, if you don't have one, you can't participate. So, I like the fact that you did both cross-platform, but you also went deep on that whole presence thing.
Yeah, and and you talked about how long ago we met. Um, I think it's safe to say there's still lots and lots and lots of people who've never tried virtual reality. And when we had met, you had built a club, a following of people around virtual reality, people who probably didn't have it at home, who'd never seen it until you showed it to them, and then they were meeting you at locations where you were giving, demonstrating VR in a nice social environment. And we did learn early on that VR is better and people don't get this. So, yes, only one person can wear the headset, but it's fun knowing that all those people are watching you. They're watching what you're doing, and they're so excited for you and what you're experiencing in virtual reality. They can't wait to get in it as well. And then you guys, when you're both out of it, you talk, you share the experience, what it was all about. This was the stuff that recruited me kind of, I was in a good world. I was making video games. I love that, and I love everything about it, and I was good at it, and I enjoyed it. But virtual reality brought some of that childlike excitement back to what we were doing, and it was mind blowing. All of us felt like our lives had been changed, and we thought we're going to do this. And you're changing people's lives on a weekly basis, And I'm thinking, uh, you know, I had a few VR parties myself, just at my house. Just call my neighbors, my friends, come over, and we'll have the VR set up. And that was the whole evening. Even though that we
Yeah.
had other things planned, that's what we would do. And it still excites people. It's still fun, and I think the feeling is still the same.
100%, man. And yeah, I was definitely your friendly neighborhood VR dealer, and in the space I would go, and you know, I don't know. I wish we had a counter of how many headsets we've put on new people, both me and you. If we had that counter in the background of the first time experience, but when you do that, you get so excited when someone has no idea what that is, and then that gift, because you gave them that feeling, and they'll forever remember the person, whoever that person might be, even though it may not be your experience, who gave them that experience, which is wonderful. And especially if you're at parties and you do events and things like that, and what I call reality stacking, if you're imbibing substances like alcohol or whatnot, and then you're in VR, it's you're going through that whole level thing. But I would love to talk on a couple things. Is you originally weren't in the VR space, so I'd like to go back a little bit, because before that you were in the gaming space. What did you do in the gaming space, and what got you into that? And then you kind of touched on the childlike magic, which got you in the VR space. But I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I stumbled upon video games. Not to say that when I was a little kid, probably like a lot of little kids today, I did think that I wanted to be a person who made video games. But life changes; it takes turns, and you go through high school, and there's no college at the time that I could get a degree and guarantee myself a job making games. So I really kind of it was a fantasy, wasn't a reality. So I did like everybody else. I got into economics, but just through a chance happening, I went knocked on the door of a video game company, and they gave me a shot at a low level position, and and then just within the first couple of weeks, I realized my dream could come true. I changed everything. My entire plan went on to like, this is what I've always wanted to do, and this is what I'm gonna do. So yeah, so I became a game producer, and um, that title, by the way, is slowly going away. Um,
How
uh,
so?
but but in the day that when I was getting my start, a producer was was a product manager, and ultimately responsible for a lot of things: creative vision, project management, budget, and timelines and schedule. Um, and nowadays the projects are so large, you need 100 people to do that stuff for you. You can't just have a producer handle that. But that it's a great start because that's software development, and software development so far is kind of feeding all these mediums, and including everything from TV and movie, as well as of course virtual reality applications and development. Um, so but the thing when the way that things have gone now in video game development is it's tougher to innovate. It's tougher to um, uh, do something maybe that hasn't been done before, or take chances or create new IP. Whereas VR gave us a fresh start. We were
Yeah.
able to kind of go back and do experimental stuff, and like, this seems like it'd be cool. Let's make it and see how it goes. And from that, able to kind of get a little taste of what video games was like when I started 30 years ago.
Well, a couple things on that. One, yeah, I'd love to dive in a little bit in terms of producer, those types of. You talked a bit about those roles. I mean, there's a lot of spots. I mean, to me, it sounded like you described a creative director and a producer, and like there's a lot of roles inside that. And I'd learn about any pitfalls or thoughts or lessons you had around that, any struggles. That's really interesting. So that's my question. One of the topics, just to touch on when you're talking about that innovation, in the space, is you're totally right. As an industry becomes saturated with stuff, right? Then in order to create new novel things, you got to put in more value. So that's why there's all of a sudden these giant blockbuster hits that all of a sudden people start dumping 10, 20, 30, 40 million in order to try to compete, because now it's gone from creativity to just a manufactured process, like a Disney movies, just kind of it just comes out, right? Versus
Yeah.
VR, it's like you put together a widget, you take a controller and you take a this thing and you merge it together and you're like, I made something completely new, no one's ever seen it before. And there is a lot of joy in those random, because it's like an undiscovered land, wild west stuff. And so that is part of the beauty, and one of the things that attracted me to it. But that's just a touch on that whole innovation side of it. But I'd love to learn, like, how are the pitfalls similar or different, being a producer in the roles in the game industry? How has that role evolved so much to be in VR? What's changed?
VR added rules, rules that we weren't used to coming from the video game world. And one of the things we learned early on was you can't just take, even though everything is still built, in 3D. Not all video games translate well to VR. And first thing, and everybody who's close to VR understands the first rule of VR has to do with motion sickness and making the user comfortable in the experience. And so many games are based on quick movement and accelerated movement, and just shaking the world itself in a game before an explosion will make someone violently ill in VR. You can't do this. So when people started saying, man, if you just took this game and put it in VR, it'd be awesome. Said, no, actually it wouldn't. It doesn't work like that. And you could see kind of their hope fade, but they don't understand, you know. So, but however,
Yeah.
having the two, guns for hands in virtual reality and full 360 degree of motion and vision and movement, and full body tracking, that is super exciting. So not to dissuade people from making something like a Call of Duty in virtual reality, just have to follow some rules, and you can still make it fun. That's why I think the first kind of big games of virtual reality were wave shooters. Stand in one place and everything comes to you, and that gets old a little bit fast, and they're starting to find better ways around it now. But so the rules of VR is kind of was a difficult transition. Yeah,
Yeah.
but nobody had written down what those rules are.
Man. I remember when I believe it came to you, and I don't know if you remember the game I pitched to you in order to get one of those sweet Vive headsets. But it was, and we built this as a prototype. We were going to show to you. I don't know if we ever did, but it was a road rash style game where you're on a motorcycle and you can hit the other person, and then they crash. I didn't really at the time when we were building it, we built the PC version of it, then built the other version of it in the PC version and in the VR version. When you crash, you tumble, right? So for anybody in VR, if you're going so fast and all of a sudden someone hits you, and then all of a sudden you just kind of randomly flip over and over and over again, I was like, oh God, you just take off the headset. You're like, I'm sorry. I'd like to, and those lessons, but you're so excited. You're kind of like willing to suffer, to go through it, even though it's not the best thing for people. It's learning.
But on the other hand, other genres like the horror genre, right, and what VR has done for that in watching people flip the headset off, or in our case we were doing demonstrations of for paranormal activity, and we built these makeshift shacks, almost they're like cardboard shacks, and with VR inside, and people going in there to demonstrate paranormal activity. And everybody in every location doing it. We did this at the premiere launch of the film, and we were kind of communicating to each other through a text thread, and just relaying all the crazy things we were seeing. Everything from I had a guy doing karate kicks and booting the walls out, and I had got to be careful because the roof will fall in on him. And so he's kicking and fighting and punching and trying to fight ghosts. And somebody else I heard they actually themselves. I heard always lots of tales of just people screaming bloody murder, and And you're like, VR is good for this. This is
Yes, it is. Yeah, there's. I did Phantasmphobia. I don't know if you've tried that. There's
no, I
a
haven't tried that one yet.
No. You're basically like all those ghost shows, ghost paranormal shows. You're
Uh-huh.
ghost hunters and you run through the ghost. You run through it. Steam game, but you could run around and play it. Super popular. But you can do it with a VR headset. And you run around there, and it's terrifying because you're in there and ghosts chase you, and then you can and you're with other people. It's a multiplayer experience, and it's terrifying. One of the things about VR is you can't put your hands in front of your face. You
You
can't
can't
like
cover it
you,
up.
you can't protect. You can't run away. And it's funny to see people run off and just run into a wall, or run into a thing. It is VR and terror is very, very powerful um, as an experience.
So
It's
that's an important point. And this is a game maker's ultimate nightmare is
uh,
you take the headset off. And I had discussions with the paranormal team, and they made some fabulous adjustments and did some really great tuning to the product. So if you just all you're going to do is just jump scare people to death, they're never going to finish here. They're not going to. Not very few are going to come to get to the end. And as a designer, that's horrifying because that's all your thought, your creative energies go into this experience, and and it's easy to scare people in VR. So you don't necessarily have to go um super extreme with it, just just enough. And they, and I thought that, correct balancing, things like that made for a really good horror experience with playable horror. There's still stuff I won't play, when nobody else is in the room. I just
100%, man. I'm right there with you. There are some ones that freak me out, and even though it could be daylight or whatever, it gets really intense. And so we we used to do a bunch of hackathons back in the day, just figuring out the technology, which was great. A bunch of passionate people just come together building things, and I made one of the most horrific experiences, and it was awful, and it was terrible to build. It was terrible to test, and it was. Um, I don't know if you remember. I don't know if you ever heard about it. This was years and years ago. But we did a hackathon, a horror hackathon, and this one gentleman, AAA developer gentleman, he goes, "I want to build a VR electric chair that shocks you in real life." And so we made this thing called Old Sparky, and built it. And I was a part of the team that did this and kind of built it from the ground up. And we had it at one of the conferences I threw, SoCal conference. But you'd basically, here's the experience: you sit in the chair, and you're basically a prisoner waiting to die. We strap you in. We have you sign a death waiver. You get strapped into the experience, and as you get strapped in, you look, and there's a CCTV monitor, and then it flashes and opens, and you're in the electric chair, and this is a social thing. So you're sitting there, and and in VR there's a red light, and on the back of the electric chair there's a real red light with one of those knife switches, and in VR there's a guy with a knife switch, and then what happens is that thing charges up. The whole thing charges up. We had one of those haptic chests on, so it simulated a heartbeat, right? And the hard thing is, you couldn't tell that wasn't your heart. And so people started to get really, and people would scream and scream and scream. And then what happened was the next person in line got to flip the trigger. But what happened when they flipped the trigger? Two things happened. One, they got electrocuted. And the two, a photo got taken of them and it got shared online. So like, meh. And so they're like, at the end of the conference, there's just dozens and dozens of people just got blasted. But imagine trying to develop on that and test that, and it's 2 a.m, you're doing a hackathon, and people are like, hey, does this work? You're like, oh, so
Well, you just
terrible.
breached rule number two, which is immersion. And I think you can probably look in a sort of a business pages type thing for VR companies, and about 30 of them are immersive, or immersed something, right? And because it's kind of, some people call it the first rule of VR, but I would say second, because but anyway, and you guys created that environment. The person lost touch with the fact that they were in virtual reality, and that's why it frightened them so much. And so someone will create a room a virtual room, and they want to make the most realistic room ever, and it's got chairs and it's got bottles and it's got a cabinet with a bookshelf and everything. And then you, as the person experiencing the room, you go into the room, you're like, this looks amazing, and you go over to grab one of the books and you can't, or you can't lift any of the bottles or nothing. I go to kick or punch the chair or something, nothing. I can't interact with the room. Suddenly it doesn't feel very real anymore. And um, this was the other uh, thing that we had to kind of work with. If we put too much in the environment, um, and enough of it wasn't, you couldn't interact with enough of it, it ruined it. And so you look at a game actually worked with the team really closely, Job Simulator.
Mm.
They created an environment that was completely interactive. There was very few things I think in those any of those um, simulations they built that you couldn't touch, grab, break, or whatever. And then when you start experimenting with what happens when I take this one and this one and put them together, and it works. And they tested that themselves, and they built a very immersive experience, one of the most successful virtual reality games yet, and in Job Simulator. And their game does not look real. It doesn't look. It looks completely silly. However, the level, you start to feel like you're in this place, and as you're interacting with things, and you forget that you're not in reality because things
Yeah.
are responding what you would expect. So
Well,
immersion.
you touched on something that was really good. Is that a lot of people that don't have experience with VR that want to make something, build something, whatever, they want it to be as real looking as possible, right? And people that have actually been in VR realize that it doesn't need to look as real as possible. It needs to be as interactable as possible,
Yeah,
and the
fair.
and that is 100% on point. To your fact that when you're talking about immersions and we're talking about the horror things, what about the flip side of things? Have you seen things in VR that spark positivity or joy or other things that has there been other experiences that give you the flip side of not horror but more the positive side of humanity?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, um, one that's comes to mind is there's this idea of this experience that was called Tree, and it was you are in a rainforest environment that quickly though becomes a little bit more stylized, and the experience rainfall, and then as the tree is absorbing water through its system, you're following that the course of the water going through the roots of the tree through and the whole time you're just kind of like, what's going to happen next? But you're just watching it and marveling at it, and it's with the music and everything else going on. It felt like, you're like, you know origin of life kind of thing, and just sort of, it had a really intense feeling to it. At the same time, another person had taken another approach to VR, and they created the experience, a near-death heavenly experience, where you actually go unconscious, and then you find your way in partially towards wherever the afterlife leads. But it starts off as it's scary, I don't know where I'm going, and you're confused, and it ends with this warmth and comfort, and then the person returns back and realize they didn't expire.
Wow.
But it was more like, stop, you don't have to be scared, this is, and you kind of went, wow, that was quite a journey, and so I
A afterlife experience without actually going to the afterlife.
yeah, they wake you up, I guess. So I mean, there's a I feel like I've left several out.
There's
Because
Well, the thing is, I mean, you've tried so many experiences, and I mean, and through the years and years, I can't even imagine how many things you've tried. So, part of it's just like open up doorways when you think about new, like things will open up your mind to those things. Real quick, on the note, can you just so everyone knows, like, can you explain kind of what you do at HTC and what does that look like?
yeah, okay, so I work with Vive Studios at HTC, which is sort of the developer facing arm of of the company. And that could mean a lot of things, but generally we support developers, try to help them find technical solutions, provide them hardware recommendations. But we also partnerships and strategic partnerships and other types uh, of of collaborations and such. But we have a more of a higher calling, I could say. We're told that we're still building this ecosystem, this virtual ecosystem, and we're basically trying to help anybody that's trying to create content for virtual headsets to get from point A to point B. Whatever it is we can do, and a lot of times that includes some type of promotion of what they're doing, working with our teams and bringing visibility to their efforts or finding them clients. It could be anything. We often just say, just tell us what you need and we'll do our best. But that's sort of my day, is usually conversing with different developers in the industry who are looking for some sort of support. And we do create content, our own content. I think though, that that eats up so much time and requires so many people that we're more focused on sort of helping other people create their content.
Yeah,
You know,
100%. It takes so much to make good content, and as you know, so it's like you could help hundreds of people, or you could build one great game. It's like there's such a it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And yeah, you've been super supportive. I know through the years I've known you, I know heard nothing but great things about Vive Studios and what you've done, and people really getting a
thank
lot of
you.
help and support. So it's been great, and yeah, so I've definitely come to you several times going, hey, I've got this thing, I'm going this place, I need this, and you're like, all right, let's see what we can do. Come on down, and it's been great. And so it's super helpful, especially for developers um, getting started in the space. And question, for to jump on that, but since you have seen so many people, I would consider you to be a mentor of young up and coming, heroic, virtual reality engineers that want to come through this path, and you
Sure.
kind of guide them. What are the typical pitfalls, problems? You address one of the things of violating the rules, but what are some of the other things that you see that are really these guardians that stop them from actually getting to where they want to go as developers?
I think there's some stubbornness that is most people have at first, because they had what they thought was a great idea, and then the first thing they ask for advice, and someone tells them to change it. And first reaction is but this is my vision and it's my idea, and I think, and that's fair. But when you hear it over and over and over again, that you this maybe look at this from another lens. You really need to be it's okay to change and realize, um, whatever it was, for whatever reason you were doing it, the reason why others aren't is because it's not a good idea in the first place. So there's a little bit of that, stubbornness, and although I think it's as much a weapon as it is weakness. So
Mhm.
just use it the right way. The other pitfalls is just to understand just what it costs to do this stuff. It's expensive, right? It's really incredibly expensive, and to create these large experiences, especially if you want something that looks real or whatever. So budget appropriately, but keep in mind your audience is not quite the same audience as, say, the Xbox audience, or you're serving a much smaller audience, and in order to keep it economy of scale, you need to keep your budget in check. And um, thirdly, I think don't try to do it all yourself. A lot of people have already done stuff and are making things available to you, whether it's tools or different APIs, or you check all the SDKs that all the companies have to offer, whether it's us at HTC or it's another headset maker. NVIDIA, all the hardware companies are providing you everything you need for the most part. You don't have to do it yourself a lot of times if you just look around, just like, so I would just say, just be aware that you don't have to build everything from scratch all the time,
Yeah.
which,
That's such a challenge. That you nailed some really, really, really good points. I mean, I've thrown a lot of content creation weekends where there's a lot of emotional investment because of a lot of energy and social pressure and you know uh, challenges emotionally because you've invested so much and it is your baby and it's a
And
challenge
that's
because
okay.
well it's good because there's a any creative situation, it's a balance between trusting your own passion and vision and listening to feedback. And it's can you keep your principles while taking advice to make it better? And some people can, and it's a whole series of grays. But one of the issues we touched on, I think, is also right onto that note is this thing of operating in a cave. Is that you operate in a cave, you don't look up, you don't get feedback, you don't look out to see what other people are doing, you don't manage your budget, and then when you pop up, you're like, I made the greatest game in the world. You're like, well, that's like these six other games, and it took you way longer, and you could have just downloaded that SDK. It's like that. It's that problem of developing in a hole, which is super dangerous. Versus like, my food's the best or whatever, but I haven't tried anything else. It's a
VR
challenge.
makes it VR makes it tougher still because right because just being in VR for most people is fun. And you put someone in VR for the first time, um, and you say, yeah, here, go in there and they drink coffee in VR and they go, that was so awesome, thanks. And so if you think you're going to create the world's first virtual coffee drinking experience and be super successful with it because that people are having fun doing that, that's not the way to take that feedback. And you have to be your own filter. You have to
Yeah.
realize you have to make sure you get down to okay, would you do it again though? And that's always ultimately what determines it. When you can't get somebody out of the headset, they want to just sit there and drink the coffee for 3 days. You're onto something. you know.
100%, man. I totally agree, and it is it learning that lesson, because it's one thing to show people that never seen it before. It's another thing to show seasoned veterans that have played it so many times that, like, will those seasoned veterans go back in? Will they promote it because they're that whole nostalgia, novelty, coolness of it is gone, and that they just want to play it because it's actually an incredible experience, really challenging. Um, what do you think in terms of, like, just for you and going through working with HTC, along the path of everything? I mean, do you have, like, what, because you're talking about helping people along the path, but do you have your own personal mission or holy grail or things that you're seeking or trying to do with VR? Is there something that you're seeking out of the whole VR experience, or is it just for the pleasure and joy of it?
Yeah, that's the toughest question to answer today, because I think there is a holy grail. But I feel like some of the roadblocks aren't coming from what's inside what we're building for the headset. It could be the headsets themselves, and I think you know what I mean. They're expensive. It still requires some setup that just it's not as easy. It's not turnkey. And think, I mean, those are just two of the issues. And ultimately, uh, I would take off my headset to do something on my phone still. I think I look at the movie Ready Player One,
Hmm.
and they can't. They're Amazon, they're Netflix, everything that they're doing for entertainment in life is in the Oasis,
Hmm.
and that I call that is kind of like the holy grail for VR too, I think, but it just has to be a bit more streamlined in the sense where I can put on my virtual reality headset and I can browse the internet, I can call my friends, I can do my taxes, and it's all just like your own desk at your fingertips. And we have to make the virtual world as convenient for everything as the real world currently is. So the Holy Grail is just more of just everything we're doing now, but we're building each application one at a time. It has to be part of the operating system itself, and that's a tall order, I know, because I think there'll be lots of fun games to play, Dylan. I think there's going to be lots of great applications, but um, get people to keep staying VR on a daily basis. It's going to have replace the phone and the laptop.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. I know. I recently Matt. You remember Matt? He
Yeah.
recently he got married 2 months ago, 3 months ago, um, and I accidentally for the first time ever took my phone for a swim with me. Just a casual swim for like 45 minutes or so, and it was done. And I was like, oh, I'll just get a phone like 3 days from now. I'll just wait until there's like a new iPhone thing come. I'll just wait. And I just felt strange not having it with me. And I felt the like urge. There were so many times in so many places, and I just felt this weirdness that I was like, oh my God, I'm incredibly addicted to my phone, and it is a part of me. And it was just like, wow. And that right now, the VR headset isn't that. VR is incredible and it's fun and it's great to put on, but it's not one of those things that like if I didn't have it, like I'd absolutely I don't know how to operate my day-to-day operations, right? And that's I mean, I feel
Right.
like what you're talking about right now is like a way of life versus an entertainment activity,
Yeah.
right?
If you could somehow take all these devices that we rely on to do to keep in touch with our friends, do our work, and the entertainment,
Yeah.
VR actually could do all those things. It's just it's just going to take a while for all that to come together and integrate. And by then too, we'll beat some of these other problems. We won't need the PC tether. We won't need our form factor will be smaller. We'll 5G. We'll have things will be it'll all come together at once. But I do still believe the future is virtual reality. Even um, and augmented reality will complement it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It will. There's going to be some sort of like hybrid. Put your reality on top of this reality, and then keep moving. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but we got to be believers because we're in the space, right? We invested
Yeah.
in
Right.
time, energy and it's just one of those things that it, it, what I loved about VR, especially when they're first getting started with it, is that the true believer people were there in the beginning because they knew the magic. They tried the magic, and they're like, "Hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but I just want to be a part of just all of this because that child. Like, it feels like you're a child again. It really
Yeah.
does. I put my 6-year-old and 8-year-old into VR. I spent like some time with them over the holidays, and they were playing Minecraft. Never played VR. I put them inside of it, and they're just like, yeah, and they're getting really upset because I'd play it, but I was doing it for work as testing things, and their parents wouldn't let them continue to play. And they're like, no, he's working. They're like, he's not working. He's in VR. They no, he's working. And it was this whole battle that they had. But it brings back that sense of childlike wonder. It's just how do you make it an everyday thing that is like the phone, which is the phone is really like, if you had an option, don't ever use your phone again. It's not. Most people would be like, I don't think so. I'm not going to give that one up. But what do you think in terms of like looking at like virtual reality? Do you remember your magic moment, like the thing that sizzled into your brain? Oh my God, this is a childlike experience. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what was that for? Can you talk about that?
It is actually the so so I was kind of secretly invited to have a demonstration of virtual reality, and the Vive was the first headset that I ever experienced virtual reality. And it's a good thing for me because I know some of the earlier prototypes from other, weren't the experiences were lacking a little bit, but
Yeah.
um, and everybody knows this experience that has gone through an HTC demo, but they put me in the thing called the Blue, and it's a couple things happen. One, I freezed. Um, I I I was so immersed right from the start that the things that were solid and they're telling me, yeah, feel free to walk around. Okay. You're on a shipwreck, the bottom of the
Uh-huh.
ocean,
Mm,
standing on the deck,
uh-huh.
and there's fish and schools of fish and things going by, and there's enough light coming from the surface of the water to see your surroundings. And it's gorgeous, but there's shadows being thrown off everything, and so the depth is obvious. It's super immersive, and I had to carefully reach down and feel that things weren't there because my mind immediately clicked with this, like this. So this is working for me right off the bat. But when out from behind you, you hear this noise, and this to scale blue whale comes swimming up, and the eyes looks this big, and it's staring at you, and its tail swishes down. I felt like it was going to blow me off the front of this, and I think it almost brought me to tears because it was like, man, I'm there. Like, I'm there. This is it. And at the same time, that's when it was suggested that maybe I joined the company. And you bet. I mean, it got me. It got me. The Kool-Aid, you know. So yeah, I was so blown away. And Dylan, that was it. That was my moment when I knew that this was for me. So.
That's incredible. It gave me tingles when you're talking about that. You're describing the big eye and the tail and feeling like you're being blown away. That's one thing with VR. You feel things like your mind. You're like mentally prepping for something. Like, you know how you hear a playlist and you hear one song to the next, and your mind already starts to play that next song. What you're talking about that right there is that wave, like that tail wave. You're like, here comes the hit, and then it doesn't. But that's the magic. It's so powerful.
It's been more than 5 years since then. And we have to remember, like, when we're showing VR to someone for the first time, and I still use that experience as the handshake, we call it. And sometimes I'm just kind of kicking back going, yeah, they're looking at the whale. And I got to remember, if this is their first time, they probably feeling the way I did 5 years. And I got to remember to always, when they come out of the headset, like, yeah, that was awesome, right? And they're like, yeah. And not just go, yeah, it's cool. I remember what I was feeling, and I have to make sure that, they understand I still know that how cool that was. And yeah, it's important.
Because you are the ambassador for that virtual experience, and to have that magic is incredible. And that's why
you get that feeling that one time too. Just you start getting used to virtual worlds, but that handshake is
it's hit me only a couple times, very, very few. One was the very first time, where I played, like, someone did some sort of Zelda top-down experience, completely ripped all the Zelda graphics, but put you in it. Got complete motion sickness. But I put that out, and I did the whole Zelda run, Zelda music, Zelda everything, 8-bit. It's terrible. I loved it, but got incredibly sick. The second time is when I went in and I did my first multiplayer experience and didn't know that there was a real person. And then you talk to a person, you're like, you're a human? Like, yeah. I was like, really? What do you, where are you at? And I was just like, that was another one of those moments. I was like, oh my God, and that's the thing that brought me to doing multi-user VR stuff, is just because of that magic of just, wow, what could we do? I mean, not necessarily building the Oasis, but getting there it's incredible. By the way, do you know that they came out with the second Ready Player 2, Ready Player 1, Ready Player 2?
The book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Yeah, it came out. I recently put that one down. It's great. It's awesome. All that fun stuff. I hope Spielberg doesn't make a movie out of it. I'll just leave it as a book.
Fair enough. It's funny. I haven't started it yet. We bought it for my son for Christmas, and he went back to college and left the book here. And I was like, cool, I get to read it now. But I'm probably still gonna take a peek. But
the book's great. Audiobooks. I never say I read something. I listen to it on an audiobook. Me and books. Me and books have we battle with each other sometimes. I can't do it. I just put on a headphone and I go off and have someone read me a bedtime story. It's beautiful. But yeah, so coming through this whole thing, you're talking about virtual reality, you're talking about in the space of getting into, so you have your mind blown, you've gone through it. Has there been anybody in the space that you look to as mentors, as advisors, as people that have done incredible works, people that you'd consider to be heroic along the journey? Is there people that you look up to, whether in real life, IRL, or virtually, that you look out to say, wow, they do great work? You mentor them, you model them, any of that type of stuff that stands out to you?
Yes, the answer is yes. It's a little bit more fresh than say video games, where a lot of people would they'll talk about these famous game producers, from Nintendo and such, but so we don't have that yet necessarily. But we do have some people that have been amazing advocates for virtual reality, and who you feel their presence in this field is driving it and keeping it interesting and helping people learn with it. And one of those guys, I think Carmack, who came from video games, is when when he talks about VR, he's educating, and he tries to tell you how it works, why it works, what the problems are, and he does it in such layman's terms. It's fascinating to me, and sometimes it amazes me. I'm working with it every day, and I still learn more about it every time he speaks. And maybe it's stuff we know. Maybe it's stuff we know, but it goes unsaid. But then he says it, and you're like, "That's really that." It's why is it an epiphany? I don't know, but I find Carmack being in uh, this it's a familiar face that I'm familiar with, and at the same time, he's a good ambassador for it overall. Um,
He's incredible, by the way. I see whenever he goes out, the halo of geeks, as they call it. There's an orbit of people that just want his attention, and he's so kind and so giving. And he's also, he pretty much pioneered and invented 3D, gaming. I mean, he did a
yeah,
lot of that.
that's a fair statement.
He just brought that in, right? And he's like, oh, I could do that, just and bang that out. So he is prolific. Would be one of those ones. And I saw one thing I was giddy about. I was watching Elon Musk and John Carmack and Twitter talking about making jet rockets back and forth. I was just like, you want to talk about, like, I was like, oh yeah, I just feel like a monkey in this level. I'm like, yep, okay. It's super impressive. But yeah, I totally agree. Carmack is one of those. If he didn't exist in the ecosystem, we would be so much farther behind. He's one of those dudes that can push an industry forward. Like,
He's our superhero, right? He's our superhero. But our frontline heroes, and this is not sucking up, man, but it's people like you, Dylan, people like you who went from a food truck to virtual reality, who shared what you were learning with other people as an evangelist, as a developer, and now as an educator. Um, there's more. There's too many to name, but I respect what you're doing for industry and for the ecosystem, more than just the people maybe who are just even creating the apps, because we're still a lot of discoveries being made right now. I don't know if we're ready yet to start. This guy's a hero. That guy's a hero. I mean, there's a lot of names people. I invented VR, but VR, we all know VR has been around for decades. It's so nobody who's created in in the last 5 years is a pioneer per se. Although they are, not saying they're not contributing, but that's not why. But that's not what they should get for recognition. What they should get for recognition is how they're making VR available to the rest of the world who doesn't have it. And I think we're getting there. More headsets, and so you're I would say you inspire me.
Thank you, but that's not really. It's not needed to me. Like, it's a very selfish thing. Of VR is cool, and I like it. And the way that I've always learned and grown in any industry, like when I got in the food business, I didn't know anything about food, so I got with other food people and we figured it out. When I got into the VR business, I didn't know anything about VR, so we got with other passionate people and we figured it out. And to me, it's like you get so much, like, same thing putting a VR headset on someone else. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do. It's fun to talk about it. It's fun to talk. And like when you come to, like, one thing that I miss, the one thing I greatly miss from this whole pandemic thing is coming to VR events and coming across old friends. Like seeing you at an event, like, hey, we're here. You're here. You want to go get a drink? Let's go. Like, that to me is one of the sad things. It's cool. You can do it in Zoom. We can have Zoom drinks. We can go off to you do, and there is some magic in that as well. But when you meet a friend at one of these, like, little VR events, and it's like an oasis. When you see an old friend, you're like, oh my God, it's you, how you been, right? That to me is so awesome. But the only way you make those friends is by sharing knowledge and information and showing up and standing up going, hey, here's what I'm working on. So that's cool. But I think there's just so many other people in the space that do way more than I do or any of those other things. It's fun, right? This is a fun space to be in.
I get what you're saying. It's a friendly industry though, and so so the credit I'm given is oftentimes the fact that maybe something that wasn't around when I was doing video games is this idea of co-works and like places like WeWork and stuff, and we have places around where I live. Um, 8 or 9 different virtual reality companies are working in them, and they're all kind of aware of what they're each doing, and they support each other, and yet they're all looking for the same thing, whether it's investment or customers. Um, but they're not competing, and it's amazing some of the collaborations that are being formed. And they're quietly trying to hide the fact that it's 4 companies working on one application because but they're all trying to help each other, but they don't want it to seem like it's like they're making something Frankenstein's monster. They're not. They're just at this point they're just being sharing what they know and trying to build the ecosystem. So I really think that being there at the beginning of this new phase in virtual reality has been exciting, and it's taught people to play nice, and rather than maybe building rivalries, they're building alliances. And I think that that's a part of the whole thing that I've enjoyed as well.
That's super powerful. One thing you're talking about this, I've noticed this also a little bit with this industry and other types of industries is when it first comes out and there's no marketplace, there's no money involved or anything like that. For the most part, people are really open, right? But all of a sudden, like when real money starts to come in, I see people start to shut down, which is it starts to like, oh my God, there's only so much of the pie, and I'm gonna lose the pie, and then people get really scared. But the people that do really really well are the ones who just openly collaborate, have those things out there, like you're talking about going to co-working spaces, don't operate in a hole, and that realize that the power of the sharing is you get so much more. I mean, that is literally human superpower. Our ability to collaborate through space and time with other humans is what
Mhm.
allowed us to dominate this planet. And people sometimes shut down from that. They forget that ability and that's one of the things that, and also it's just a better way to live. At least in my own theory, my own method is like I'm definitely like, I get as many friends around me as possible. I'm like, where do you want to go? I don't know. Let's figure it out. So yeah, there's a lot of joy in that. Um, you know what what advice would you give to somebody that's just getting started right now, like you're like just like they're maybe listening to this or something, that they want to get into the technology but they haven't done anything yet? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say now is as good a time as ever. I think there's still plenty of opportunity for investment. I think though, it's getting harder and harder to come up with an original idea. But I think look at it this way. Um, maybe maybe an idea is not original, but it's the way it's applied and how easy it is to use that might get it over the top. And so I think it's okay. You see something else that's being done, and you think it's doing wrong. They're doing it wrong. To come up with a build a better mousetrap kind of situation. So my advice is you know form alliances, get to know as many people as you can, take the support when it's offered, and push the dream. It's okay. Yeah, it's a great time to be honest with you. As good as any, and especially we're turning another corner. I think we're about to see sort of the true next generation of these consumer VR kits.
Mhm.
I think Quest 2 is a good example of that. Uh, doubles theoretically doubles the power of the original Quest. Um, and in a one life cycle, it's pretty good, So, all-in-ones are going to be important to the ecosystem and to the both enterprise and normal consumers. So, I think we're kind of where we wanted to be when 5 years ago when we said where we're going to be. I think VR is right there, and it's getting closer to what we thought it needed to be in order to sustain popularity. So, the advice is really just go with it, do it.
Go with it. Yeah. Where would you say, like, how would they connect with people online? Considering this is like, my first thing was like, go to conferences, but that's not really a thing. How do people form alliances in this new post-COVID era? What do you think?
Okay, so yeah, you make a good point, right? When
I, it's
we were all meeting in person. It was another situation. It was different.
it was great when we
Um,
did that, and I enjoyed it. I was just like, when you said that, I'm like, yeah, you should go to Meta, you should go to Oh God, what is that? Because I don't know how you'd form a. I mean,
well,
online, obviously, but I don't know how or where you'd get started with that.
let's assume this situation we're in is temporary for one,
Mm,
but in the meantime, I know there's a lot of VR groups
mm,
and meetups, and surprisingly, um, maybe not surprisingly, the people that are forming some of these I think there's one called XR Group that I've talked to in the past, and um, you think it's just a meeting of minds of people who are really enthusiastic about VR. But then you find out a lot of them are movers and shakers. They're doing stuff, um, you know, finding solutions. They're for companies in virtual reality. They're running their own group uh, maybe on some different VR vertical that they're doing a lot, and they're influential and they're knowledgeable and they're open. And I think that you kind of have to dig a little bit to find people like that. But the VR community is close knit, and right now it's still very welcoming. So for people that need to find those contacts, they're still out there. You just have to use uh,
get,
maybe
fi-
the internet.
yeah, the internet. Find some Facebook groups, maybe some other things like
Yeah,
that.
some LinkedIn groups, some
Yeah,
Facebook groups, and
yeah,
the thing that it's always social, because as we've already talked about, VR has to be social, or it some of its luster is lost. And so impressively, they're willing to meet and talk and share ideas.
love that. Um, are there any Are there any last thoughts that you had that you'd want to share? Because I'd love for you to tell people how they get a hold of you and how they could find you in some way, shape, or form. If they're a young developer and they have a great idea, or they've built something, or they're on the path and they want to publish. Um, but is there any other lessons or insights or things you'd like to share with them before sharing kind of how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, insights to share about what to do. Yeah, there's starting points are vary. I would say it's you probably would not want to start really sharing ideas with people until you actually begun the process of building them. And if you just want to call someone to talk, that's one thing. But if you want to pitch a concept that you don't have any uh, paper trail, or you're giving your idea away. So just keep that in mind. When if you have this great idea, be careful about how much of it you share, because things move so quickly and your idea can be copied quickly. So my point is really just get past that phase. Get past the point where you're like, what do you think? Get past that. Get to the point where you're going, here's how it works. That's when you're ready to start talking to people in the industry, and finding out, how am I going to build this thing. So yeah.
Beautiful. So it's one of those things. Don't tell me, show me.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah. Okay.
pretty
That
much.
that's beautiful.
prove
And
prove your idea, and
yeah.
at least the paper concept.
And if people want to get a hold of you or find out more about what you do, how do they look you up? What does that look like?
Yeah, you can email me. Should I give my work email, Dylan, or would you
Whatever works
recommend
for you.
LinkedIn?
It's whatever you're comfortable with. There's been a whole range of things here. So
I'll tell you what, you can look me up on LinkedIn, but you can also, if work emails for work.
mhm.
So if someone has something they want to discuss, and my job, like I mentioned, is to help cultivate this VR ecosystem. So it's totally fine. You want to talk about VR, want to talk about your business, or an idea that you're wondering how to, who might have an ear to help you out. You can always Jason_R at htc.com. It's that easy.
Beautiful. feel free to give out your home address as well.
Yeah, It's okay.
Jason, I appreciate you being on here. We'll go ahead and wrap this, but it was a pleasure talking with you.
And same, and I hope we see each other again soon, and it'd be great when we can all meet face to face as well.
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes Quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening. See you on the other side.